Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy podcast. Each week, we expose the faulty foundational mindsets of the past and rebuild a newer, stronger foundation essential in creating your meaningful legacy. We've got a lot of work to do, so let's get started. As much as you like this podcast, I'm certain that you're going to love the book that I just released on Amazon, Fuel Your Legacy, The 9 Pillars to Build a Meaningful Legacy. I wrote this to share with you the experiences that I had while I was identifying my identity, how I began to create my meaningful legacy, and how you can create yours. You're going to find this book on Kindle, Amazon, and as always on my website, samknickerbocker.com. Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy show. And today we have another wonderful guest from the southern states. And all these people, nice, deep, low southern draws. I love it. So I'm grateful that you're able to come on here and share your knowledge and your experience. So our guest today is his name is Cory Lee. He's a serial entrepreneur. He loves building businesses, primarily in the health and fitness world. But he's built businesses, he's sold businesses. He just really understands what that takes. And part of that's building a brand. Part of that's building something that you can already see yourself passing on by the time you start the business. And so that's what we're going to talk a lot about today. How do you boldly walk forward into something that you don't really know the outcome, but you have a good idea? And how do you pre-plan that outcome? And that's really what legacy is all about, is not just like getting through your life, surviving, but how are you intentionally planning what you want your future to be like, and then how are you putting that plan into action? So one thing that's, I think, awesome about Cory is he actually worked with and works with the John Maxwell team. So if you don't know who John Maxwell is, you're probably not really yet committed to personal development. For being honest, John C. Maxwell, he's probably one of the best business and personal development leaders in the industry. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, ever. I mean, I read a lot of books, and he's very, very good at what he does. And I'm grateful for all the knowledge that he's put out there for us. So I'm excited to hear a little bit more about that. But thank you, Cory, again, for coming on. Please go ahead and share with us what got you started, how you get the confidence and the courage to just boldly act forward in your dream and create your legacy.
Yeah, awesome, Sam. Well, man, I greatly appreciate you allowing me to come on and share part of the story. You talk about the southern accent. I try to cover it up, but it doesn't work. My wife and I, we got married. We moved out to Arizona at one point, and people say, "You're not from around here, are you? So you must be from Texas." But anyway, we're here in Mississippi, so I appreciate the opportunity. And yeah, I love what the podcast about Fuel Your Legacy. And it kind of my journey into entrepreneurship started, when I was younger. I was raised in North Mississippi, but I was raised at an early age by my mom and my grandmother. And that's because when I was about 3, my dad, he took out a piece of paper, and on this piece of paper, he wrote and taped it to the door of our single wide trailer and told my mom that he was moving to Chicago with another woman, and she got the opportunity to raise a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old on her own, right? And that was me and my brother, but she wasn't really on her own. She had my grandmother, and my grandmother, Sam, I can still hear my grandmother's voice to this day. She'd say, these two grandbaby boys of mine, they ain't growing up to be no sissies, right? They ain't growing up to be no sissies. And we'd be at her house, and she'd say, "Boys, get out here." And we'd get up, we'd walk through her house, and we'd go out onto her carport, and she would have her car jacked up with the driver's side tire laid over, and she'd say, "Pick it up, put it back on." And I'm like 5 trying to lift this tire, can't even lift the tire. And she would have us in her bathroom, hovered over her toilet with a plunger, just trying to unclog this unclogged toilet, right? There's nothing wrong with the toilet, but she was living out that old John Wooden quote, when opportunity comes, it's too late to prepare, right? She wanted us to be ready for when that tire was flat. She wanted us to be ready for when that toilet was clogged up. And Sam, my mom and my grandmother, they loved us very much. They did the best they could, but it was really in that environment I was programmed to believe certain things. I was programmed to believe things about you and your listeners, and I was programmed to believe things about me and my potential and what I could and could not do, right? I was programmed to believe, if you live in a big old house with a swimming pool, then that said something about who you should be. And if you lived in a little bitty rundown shack, then that said something about who you should be. And if you wore those cool new Jordan shoes, that said something about you. But if you wore those Walmart brand with the little Velcro across the top, then that said something about you. And now, I was also programmed with some sayings, and this is where we're kind of going with this is, some of the sayings like you got to be in the right place at the right time, and don't take risks because it's better to be safe than it is to be sorry. But the one, Sam, that really affected me the most in the most negative way was stay humble. And stay humble is great if you understand what humility really is. But see, I thought stay humble meant that other people were better than me, that I thought of myself of less than, right? And that my gifts and my talents and my ideas weren't good enough. So I lacked a lot of self-confidence, and I decided to go to college to be a physical therapist assistant, which is what I am, instead of being a real physical therapist, because I didn't think I was smart enough. And I had an invitation to play college baseball, but because I knew in my heart and in my mind the catcher on that team was way better than me, and I didn't deserve to be on the same field as that guy, I didn't even show up for my own tryout. And it was all because I had this doubt of and self-confidence that I lacked because of humility. And then I had a teacher come up to me, Sam, and she challenged me to do something I'd never done before, right? She challenged me to get outside of my comfort zone. And looking back, this lady, she was always on me, always challenging me to get outside of my comfort zone. And what she challenged me to do wasn't anything major or big. It was a 5K. It was to run in a 5K. But see, I played high school baseball and football, and the only time we ran was for punishment. We didn't get up on those Saturday morning for some fun run, right? So, but because I respected my teacher, I went and did this 5K, and I can remember running this 5K, and I crossed this finish line, and as I've crossed this finish line, they put that little finisher's medal around my neck, and this thought just popped into my mind. I just ran 3 miles without stopping. I wonder how much further I can go. And that 3 turned into 6, 6 turned into 13, 13 turned into 26, and 26 turned into 31. And I ran a 31-mile race on the beach in the sand in Destin, Florida, and I won the thing first place overall. And as I finished that race, another thought crossed my mind of, I just ran further than I thought was even possible. I wonder what other areas of my life am I holding back in? I wonder how much further I can go. And I started asking myself that question. I wonder what else I can do. And that question led to, in a 5-year period of time, building 6 businesses, 2 physical therapy clinics, 4 gyms, and having 3 kids, all in a 5-year period of time. In a 5-year period of time, we sold those businesses, kept all the kids, but we sold the businesses. And I look back to that, and it was a teacher. Her title was teacher, but she was a leader because she saw something within me that I couldn't even see within myself. And she called that out. And that's exactly what leaders do, is we see talent and potential within other people, and we extract talent and potential. And so what kind of helped me get over the edge as jumping into entrepreneurship was a small win, and then starting asking the question of, I wonder what else I can do, and just stepping forward, and that's kind of boom, part of my journey right there in a short little blurb, but that's kind of where we are today. So,
hey, thank you so much. I love that. In fact, I want to talk just about a few different things to both, but I think that strong women are for me at least, they're key players in my story as well. And I don't think I honor them enough, the people who have helped me personally. I mean, I can think of a handful of women that I would say they're people who I considered my mothers when I was younger. When I was younger, my parents are still together, and I love that, and they have been my whole life. But there was a lot of abuse, and now the woman I grew up with my mom, and who she is today, I wouldn't really say. I mean, there's a lot that's the same, right? A lot of beliefs, a lot of things are the same, but there's also a lot that's not even remotely close. And I'm just glad that we all can grow and forgive each other. But ultimately, when I was growing up, I was seeking for community and motherly love from a lot of different women, because that was the strong women in my life that were going to give that to me and help me grow. And I think where would you be without strong women in your life?
Yeah. There's no telling. I mean, you think about the situation that my mom was in. It could have been easy for her, for somebody like that, to go into a deep depression and not be present, right? But she didn't. And I don't know where I would be if it wasn't for a strong mom or a strong grandmother. And even my wife, she is a very strong lady, and she has stretched me to become really the man that I am today, right? But I mean, I think strong women like that can help you develop into who you were really called and destined and created to be too. So
I completely agree. I'm curious. Again, I don't know exactly where you grew up, how close that community was, but I'm sure that you weren't the only one who had either a dad or a mom walk out on them, of your friends and people that you know. So what was the outcome? What was different about you that, or even, I mean, you could even throw your brother in there. You know, I don't know where your brother's at today, but just based on my own family, I know that you can all go through the same experience and end up in wildly different areas with different mentalities, different beliefs about yourself. So how is what you've been able to accomplish in that belief switch, how is that contrasted with people who didn't have that yet or haven't had that yet? Not that they won't, but they just haven't had that experience where they decided to believe in themselves.
Yeah, I think I definitely contrast my brother. He's definitely on the other end of the spectrum. Love him and hope at some point that his mindset shift will change as well. But, he really struggles and kind of got into a bad crowd too. But I think for us, it was just making decisions, right? We went through the very same situation. But I think I was determined I wanted to change that, right? The show is Fuel Your Legacy. And I think at an early age, I knew that I wanted to create something that lasted beyond myself. And that meant being present and not skipping out, right? And and I think you can go through, I mean, there may be 100,000 listeners to this, and you're going to get 100,000 responses, right? But I think for me, it was a choice to be intentional about who I wanted to be, and that was to be present and create something that lasted beyond myself. And I
love that. I think that there's two things that I want to bring out of this. Is one, that doesn't matter who you are or how many of your siblings or the people you know, they all went through the same experience, right? Everybody's going to get their own takeaway from it, number one. And number two, it's okay that somebody hasn't got to where you are. And we're going to dig into this humility conversation, because it's something that I actually am. I had the similar mindset change, and it's fascinating how that can impact just not just the beliefs about yourself, but how other people perceive you. Because when you no longer portray, and again, I don't know what your religion is. I grew up in a predominantly Latter-day Saint religion, and often if you read from the Bible, if you read from Christian texts, then it's like, you need to be humble, and you shouldn't be prideful, and the pride is the devil of whatever. And I don't feel like, I shouldn't say this. I think in Holy Writ, there actually is pretty good description of what humility is and what's not humility, and how to be confident and recognize the power that you do have without being overbearing. I think that it's described fairly well, but it's not very well received. For whatever reason, people misinterpret it. Because once you see it, then you're like, oh yeah, it says it right there. But until you see it, you have this false sense of humility. And then when you change from this false sense of humility to you no longer put yourself beneath somebody, but you view everybody as equals, then because everybody else is still falsely humble and viewing you as better than them, then and because you choose not to go by that narrative or put yourself down when they lift you up, then they see you as prideful. And it's like, I'm not prideful. I'm not saying I'm better than you. I just am me and you're you, and we can respect each other. And I really want to bring that out because I mean, this is your brother that you think, hey, I hope that one day he can have the same experience. He's not worse than me just because he's in a different crowd. Excuse me. Just because he's in a different crowd or he's made different life choices, he's not any different than me, and we can have that compassion. And I think that compassion is missing in our world today. Definitely in America, we're going through some elections. We're going through a lot of different things that cause division because there's a lack of humility and understanding that we're all in this together, and that neither one person is better or worse. We all just are, and we're making decisions based on what we think is going to be best for our future. Now, I might disagree, and I might think that decisions you're making are going to be worse for your future, which is why I'm ardent about what I believe, right? But that doesn't mean that I'm right. It just means that I have my beliefs and you have your beliefs. And so understanding that, I think, is really important for anybody listening to build that compassion into their life, that other people, they just are, and we can love them as they are. We don't need them to change, and we can love them the same, and we can be happy if they make choices that we feel are better, I guess, if that's beneficial.
Yeah. So, man, I mean, you could probably talk for about 3 or 4 hours on humility, but that's been a very a long journey for me right there. I heard Adrian Rogers teaching on humility not too long ago, and he said humility is a form of rebellion, right? And I thought that was interesting. But he said, we've all got these gifts and these talents and these abilities, and people think when you start to let these gifts and talents shine, that's called arrogance. But he said, no, that's not arrogance. That's awareness. And the moment you step in and you don't bring that forward, the moment you step in and you decide to hold back and settle for something less because you've got a sense of false humility, then that's rebellion against the gifts that God has freely given you, right? So my journey of humility is I've recognized that humility isn't thinking less of yourself, but it's thinking of yourself less, right? But it's also recognizing the gifts and the talents that you've been given. It's recognizing that I'm gifted and talented, but I'm using those gifts and talents to serve and add value to other people, right? And I think about, everybody on here has probably heard the law of gravity, but there's another law called the law of polarity, right? You think about a long pole, and on this pole, on one end of it, it's hot, and on the opposite end, it's cold, right? It's on the same pole, they're just on opposite ends, right? That's the law of polarity. It's the law of opposites. If I've got up, I've got down. I've got left, I've got right. But if you think about this law of humility, or this pole of humility, on one end, you've got, arrogance and pride, which says, look at me, look at me. And then on the opposite end, that says false humility, that says, oh, woe is me, woe is me. Here's the deal. Look at me, and woe is me, both point back to me. And it's not about me, right? So I think the underlying is recognizing my value and then valuing other people. Being people of value who value other people. I think that's, for me, the underlying key to humility and walking in true humility, recognizing gifts, talents that I have, using those to serve and add value to other people because they are valuable too. So.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that this contrast of pride, again, because if you come from this religious perspective, then I like how you say it's rebellion. I would say it's that this false sense of humility is actually pride at its worst, right? Yeah. Like a false sense of, in the scriptures you hear where God says, or Christ says, if you're giving a gift begrudgingly, then you're better off not giving it, right? And so it's the same type of thing. If you're falsely being humble, the reasoning you're falsely being humble is because you don't want to appear prideful, which then in turn makes you look better. So it's still trying to look better than other people. So whoever can look the lowliest, and they talk about the Jews who would they would mourn in sackcloth and ashes, and it's who can mourn the biggest, who can have the most pain, right? Because that's a sign of glory or whatever. Who can have the most discoloration on your body when you're mourning. And it's like, it's all just about who can do it the best. And so it's actually false pride. The problem is that a lot of people, they don't see it that way. So it's easier to take a prideful person. In my experience working with people, it's easier to help a prideful person become humble than to have a falsely humble person become and see everybody as equal, because it's a double negative in that case. Whereas a prideful person, you're just like, hey, this is what actual humility looks like. And they're like, oh, okay, so everybody's great, because they already believe that they're great. And then all you have to do is convince them that everybody else is just as great. And then they're like, oh yeah, I can get that. Like, I've got my gifts. I suck at certain things, but yeah, everybody else can be great too. As long as I don't have to be not great, then everybody else can be great as well. And that person's a lot easier to convince that everybody else is great than somebody who believes that nobody's allowed to be great. Nobody's allowed to actually shine. Like, that's the ultimate pride in my mind. It's just like, ugh, it's terrible. So I used to be there. I understand that I was there before. But I just love that I don't have to be there anymore. I can see the gifts of other people, fully recognize their gifts, and fully recognize my gifts, and not be shamed or lack of playing out. Right? I can go full out with my gifts and allow other people to shine. So I'm curious, in your overcoming this false humility, how would you, like, what are some suggestions or practices or habits or behaviors do you feel like if somebody feels as though, and these are just the phrases, right? So this is how I would say you can catch yourself and say, yep, I'm falsely humble. Okay. When somebody compliments you and says, man, you've got beautiful eyes, you've got awesome hair, I love your shirt, I love your car, your house is really clean today. I mean, these are like basic little things, but the natural reaction for most people is to say, oh, they're just normal. I didn't even do anything to my eyes today. I didn't even do my hair. Oh, it's so messy, right? There's like 2 or 3 things on the floor. Oh, my house is so messy. Look, I've been in some messy hoarder houses. Your house is freaking clean. Okay. Like, don't downplay. So if you're downplaying compliments, then I would say that's like the first sign that you're falsely humble, rather than saying, oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I received that compliment, and likewise, right back at you. So these are the tells that you're falsely humble. Okay. So how do we overcome that? What's a practice, habit, mindset, or behavior that we could adopt into our lives to move closer to recognizing our own strength and power while fully allowing others to stand in theirs?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head right there, man. I think the first thing is awareness, right? Exactly what you said. For the longest time, I couldn't receive a compliment, right? But I wasn't aware. I didn't even catch myself not receiving it. If you paid me a compliment, or hey, you're great at communicating, it's no, it's not that great, right? I wasn't even aware that I would say those things. So for me, I think the first step is becoming aware of what you're saying, but then from there is receive it. Right? Receive it and say, well, I really appreciate that I really appreciate you saying that. So for me, first step is becoming aware of it. And then 2 is receiving that and really listen into that too. The things people compliment you on, those are clues, right? Those are clues to some of your areas of giftedness. And for you, it may just come very natural, and we call it, well, I just do this, or I just do that. Whatever comes after the just is a clue to something you're naturally gifted at, right? So I would listen into that. I would receive it, and then I would listen into it too. You know, people say that experience is the greatest teacher, but really it's evaluated experience that's the greatest teacher. And if we're not taking time to reflect and to evaluate the things people are saying to us, or reflecting on the things that we've done during the day, we'll miss some lessons, and we'll miss some key learnings too. Because, you know, one of the things I found on my journey as well is that success leaves clues, but you never pick up those clues if you don't take the time to reflect. So I know I kind of rambled just a bit there, but I would say receive it and listen into it as well, and mine the gold in that. Yeah.
I think that's fabulous. And awareness, I think, is it's what changed my life, is just becoming aware. So I created journals. There's an Identify Your Identity, Redefine Your Defining Moments journal. You can get that on Amazon. There's a fulfillment journal. Get that on Amazon. There's even the Fuel Your Legacy 9 Pillars to Build a Meaningful Legacy. That's on Amazon as well. All of these journals, they're all designed to help you identify what are you good at, what do you enjoy doing, what really lights you up and brings you fulfillment, and how do you share that with others. The main theme in all of those is, how does this gift that I've been given, or this desire, this dream, how is that going to benefit other people? Right? It's not how it's going to lift me up. How am I going to be cooler? It's how is me living my legacy going to benefit other people? And that theme is tied through all my journals, because that's what I think this is about. It's about how are we going to serve others? So I'm curious. I want you to go into a little bit more depth here, but if you're listening to this podcast, ask yourself, what could I do? Or what could you do? What could I do if you were enough? I mean, that's such a powerful question. What would you do if you were enough? So as you started to break these beliefs of believing that I couldn't do stuff, and you just started asking yourself, well, what else can I achieve? What else can I achieve? You're able to do a lot of things, but speak to that a little bit as far as the question of what could you do if you were enough? And anytime somebody tries to start breaking out of their mold and asking themselves this question, they're going to start taking risks most often. And the people around them, out of the love of their heart and wanting to protect them, become to be naysayers. They want to protect you, and they say, hey, you can't do that because you've never done it before. And they want to protect you. They aren't doing it out of malice, like they're doing it out of love. But tell me the story of your biggest naysayers as you went through that time period of transition of belief, and how did you overcome them? How did you help them see more in themselves as you became more successful?
Yeah. Honestly, my biggest naysayer was probably myself, honestly. My family, I told you I grew up with the saying, don't take risk. It's better to be safe than it is to be sorry type thing, right? My mom and my family were never really naysayers, but you could see it in their eyes of, they didn't want to squash dreams, but you could see they didn't have the belief. But for me, I was actually my biggest naysayer. So I can remember we were driving around. We always wanted to open up our own physical therapy clinic, right? And we'd be driving around town and we'd say, wouldn't it be cool? Wouldn't it be cool if we had our own physical therapy clinic? And, wouldn't it be cool if this PT clinic didn't only do physical therapy, but we had a gym with it too? We're making an impact in the community. And we were getting to the point where we were getting ready to do that. And I had my notebook. I had all the other PT locations and all those kind of things, my business plans. And I remember driving around town one day, and I drove by these other physical therapy locations, and they had the names. You know how you go to a doctor's office and they got the names of the credentials out behind it. And I drove by these PT clinics, and they had their names. They had the doggone alphabet behind their names, right? All these credentials, and every one of them. And I remember thinking, oh man, I can't compete with that doggone alphabet. I'm just an assistant. And I remember coming home, and I told my wife, I said, there's no way we can compete with that. I'm they got the alphabet. I'm just an assistant, and you're a new grad, right? You haven't even been out of school for very long. We can't compete with that. I can't compete with that. And she looked at me and she said, that may be true that you're not them though, and they're not you. You know how to make people feel good. And what I realized was I was falling into this comparison trap. So for me, the biggest naysayer for me was me. And the important thing there was having somebody, being associated with somebody. For me, it was my wife. But being associated with people who can see beyond your BS. Your belief system, right? To help you stretch that too. Because what she showed me was that I was comparing myself to other people, and then I needed to snap out of that. That again, like what we've been talking about, they're awesome people. I knew those guys and girls, and they were awesome. but I wasn't them and they weren't me, right? And so early on that was, and continuing on, I still find myself falling into that. But I want to share with you and your listeners a little phrase that I've learned to tell myself, right? And that's up until now. Right? As you continue to stretch and as you continue to grow and you're trying new things that you've never done before, the little talking monkey in your head will start telling you, you've never done that before. Who do you think you are? And that talking monkey is kind of like the bully on the playground. And sometimes the bully on the playground just needs a big pop in the nose, right? You got to punch him right in the nose. And the way you punch the bully in your mind in the nose is say, up until now. Up until now, that may be true. But going forward, I'm going to do this, right? Up until now, that may have been a fact, but the truth is this, facts change, truth is constant. And the truth is you've been gifted, you've been talented, you're unique, and you've got your own gifts and talents, and this world needs your gifts and talents. And if you don't step into that, then you're not only hurting yourself, you're robbing the world. So up until now, it may have been a fact, but the truth is slightly different. So anyway, I just share that for me, myself was the biggest naysayer, sometimes still is, and I just have to pop him in the nose sometimes.
Yeah, no, I get that totally. So with this thing called comparison, this is a fascinating thing. I just, so my wife and I, we had this dream. I don't know if it's a dream, but kind of a dream. She went to a retreat and came home and told me about her kind of little vision of what she saw herself doing. And I was like, you know what, why don't we just do that? Like, it'd be so much fun to create a couples retreat that's just like with our friends. I mean, like a few of the couples that are our friends, and with the sole purpose of bettering ourselves, like as a group, get a few 5 or 6 couples that are committed to becoming just better marriages, better, stronger humans, and get us all to go to a retreat and let's go have fun, right? Well, so this is my thought process. I don't want it to be the problem that I have with a lot of retreats is some kind of sales pitch to get you into something else in the end. Eventually, like that's almost what most of them are, at least all the ones I've been to. I'm sure there's some that are not, so I'm leaving it open, but I haven't been to any yet. They're always trying to get you to buy something else. I'm like, I don't necessarily want to go to buy something else. I think if everybody just, paid $1,000 and we went and had a blast, and the sole purpose was to improve ourselves, then that would be great, right? Like, I think this would be great. So then I put on Facebook, and I'm thinking, well, each of us, we all have different strengths in our marriages. We all have different weaknesses in our marriage. I know I do. So different people could take like maybe an hour, 2 hours for a day and train or teach about what they do in their marriage in this specific area. And we could all learn from each other. So this is my masterminding of marriages. This is my mind. And then I thought, well, it would be fun as well to get some guest speakers of somebody that, like, fairly universally people look up to that marriage, or they look up to that person in marriage. And coming from I'm going to use the word humble, a humility perspective of not anybody's better or worse. We all are, and there's areas for growth in all of our relationships. So I post this on Facebook and I say, hey, what relationships or marriages do you look up to that you'd consider asking for advice if you were struggling? And it was incredible to see a lot of people. They're like, oh, I just don't compare with anybody. I don't compare myself. I'm like, I never said anything about comparing. The fact that you say you don't compare is kind of a sign that you're comparing. Like, the idea that like you're unwilling to say, or, oh, I just find the answers all by myself between God and I. And like, I'm a deep religious person. Okay. I'm not saying that God can't give you answers. I don't want anybody to get that impression. But sometimes God, often, at least for me in my life, God answers my questions through other people. So like, if you're so stuck on the lump on a log that you're only going to listen to what God says, and you aren't willing to accept input from anybody else, I don't know, like, look at the Bible. How often does God just come down and answer questions rather than sending a messenger? It's very, very rare. It's not that it doesn't happen, guys. I'm not saying that can't happen for you, but like, it's not the common. It's not the rule, it's the exception. And so it's fascinating that people are so scared of comparison, and yet we get so caught in it. And for me, when I ask the question, I don't even think about comparison. I think, hey, everybody has benefits, and I'm an observer. I'm super judgmental in the fact that I have to make judgment calls about what I'm going to adopt into my life and what I'm not going to adopt into my life. And I think God wants us that. He says, judge ye righteously, right? We've got to make judgment calls. We can't just be judgment free. We've got to make judgment calls about how we want to behave. Now, we don't condemn people for other choices. We don't condemn ourselves for the choices we make. We make judgment calls about what, and I think there's a big difference between judgment and condemnation. But that comparison there is such an interesting thing. How do you break? Is breaking free from comparison wholly tied to being truly humble and recognizing that everybody's equal? Like, I don't know. I'm just brainstorming here with you, but like, I want to hear what your thoughts are.
Yeah, tracking. So going back to one of the things we talked about earlier, I think awareness is the key, right? Because I didn't even know I was comparing myself, right? I just saw that, and internally I started comparing myself, and somebody else had to snap me out of it. As I've grown in my own personal growth and my own leadership and those kind of things, I've come to, I believe awareness is key. Awareness of what you're thinking about and what you're allowing in. And also going back to what you're talking about, everybody, I mean, you can learn from anybody, right? Everybody is your teacher. And that's kind of, if I would have saw that question, that's where I would have gone to. I can learn from anybody, right? I've also learned from the complaining customer. Within every complaint, hey, there's a request in there somewhere, right? And but I think awareness is so key. I think it's so key to know what we are thinking about and what we're allowing in and where our mindset is going. And when we can stop that train of thought, we can say, isn't that interesting, right? Now, it is kind of almost a default setting. But another phrase that I've used to kind of stop that default, to stop that train of thought is, isn't that interesting, right? Isn't that interesting? So, yeah.
That's my go-to. Yeah, interesting.
Okay, good.
Yeah, like, cause I don't see myself, and maybe I'm just wrong. That's the thing. Maybe I'm falsely unaware of how I do compare myself, right? I know there's times in my life where I feel it, where I feel it coming on. I see somebody reaching success that I've like, the worst is, I say the worst, but like when I talk to somebody about my goals and my dreams and they just happen to be in a better position to attain those faster than me. And so maybe it wasn't their dream. They'd never thought of it before. And then I tell them what my dream is, and then they go get my dream faster than me. Then it's like, dang it, but so like, I'm aware, I feel that coming on, but then I say, I'm just happy for them. I'm just thrilled that they have the resources, they have what they need to make that happen. That's thrilling. It's one of the issues in my business that I run. There's like, oh, you need to compete. You got to compete. And I'm like, I don't understand competition. I understand me becoming my best self. And I'll look at what I did last month, say, how can I become better? But when it comes to me looking at other people, it's like, I don't want to compete with somebody. I just want to be happy for them that they're succeeding. Like, I'll get mine when it's time, and I'm going to strive every day for me to be my best. But if their best was better than my best today, I'm happy for them. Like, there's not going to be like, oh, I wish this person would just stop working for a day. No, like, I'm thrilled, man. Like, go win for your family. I'm going to win for mine. And so I just love the concept of believing in each other. And I think that promotes more belief in myself and gives me, it just helps me not be so hard on myself, honestly. When I'm willing to not be hard on others, then I'm not as hard on myself. And that's a huge blessing in my life that I've experienced. So, well, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on humility. It wasn't exactly where I was planning with this, but I think that for me, I think that is one of the biggest things that I see the people that I'm training, the people that I'm leading struggle with, is they're still stuck in comparison. They still look at me as like, oh my gosh, you're so much better than me. I'm like, I'm not better. I maybe have been doing this longer. I maybe have more experience, but You can spell better than I can. You're better at connecting with people. You're more outgoing than I am. Like there's all these things that we just have different skills in. We just need to learn how to take your skills and make your skills successful. Because that's what matters. You don't need to become a clone of Sam. It was one of the hardest things when I started my brand, Fuel Your Legacy. It's like, I didn't want to recruit people, for lack of a better word, recruit people into my legacy. I wanted to create a brand that said, I want to help you achieve your legacy. Mm-hmm. Because we all have different legacies, so and different goals. So I'm curious, as you're going through this transition, right? Going from, I don't even know what you were doing before, but going from being a physical assistant, physician's assistant, physical therapy assistant, is that right?
That's it. Yes,
sorry, it's a lot of words.
Yeah,
to owning your own shops, how did you like financially transition that? Because there's a lot of people who they have their dream, but they're working full time and they don't know how to either find the right hours in the day or the financial backing to be able to jump in. I guess if they just jumped in, they could live on beans and rice for a few weeks or months or years or however long it takes to become successful. But how did you financially back that transition? I'm curious.
Yeah. So a lot of mine's out of ignorance, Sam. I just jumped right in, man. Sometimes I definitely don't recommend that to everybody. Right. So for us, it did work out, but we knew, like, I think, and I've been working on this for a little bit, right? So this is not a fully fleshed out thought. I think we were all called to do certain things, right? And I truly believe that was 100% in God's plan and God's will for us at that time, right? And I just knew it, and there was no doubt in my mind that it was not going to work out, just because I knew it was in God's will. So when I coach people, my recommendation to them is build it up on the side, right? And get it to, you want to test and prove. If you've got something new. For us, physical therapy wasn't anything new, right? It's a model that's been around for a long time. We knew it was going to work, right? So we could just jump right into that. If it's a new product or new business that you're starting, I highly recommend building that up on the side. For us, though, we did jump in, and it was a little bit scary. We didn't know much about business. We didn't know much about getting financing. We just took one step at a time. We saw one step and we took that step. And as we took that step, the next step was revealed. And then the next step was revealed, right? And I think a lot of times we get caught up in the how can I, the big how can I, when it's how can I, what's at least one thing I can do, right? It's like we're standing at the bottom of this long staircase, and the only step that is revealed, the only light that is shining is on the one step that's in front of us. And we're like, I'm not going to take one step until all these steps are revealed. And it's not going to happen because you haven't been obedient to the first step yet. Once you take the first step, then the next step will be revealed. So for me, we did just jump in, but as I coach people, the recommendation is what's at least one thing you can do right now that you know you can do. And as you do that, I promise you the next steps will be revealed. A lot of people get caught up with, I don't have the money. I don't know the right people. I don't have the right resources. I don't have the skills. As you take those steps, those will come to you. I promise you, you'll figure it out along the way. So for us, it was take the step. Take the first immediate step right in front of you.
And you had a very supportive wife, it sounds like.
100%. Yeah.
It sounds like she was in lockstep with you. And that's something that not everybody has. Not everybody has that supportive spouse. And that's a whole nother hurdle that many have to climb. But it's my belief that with enough conviction of what truth is, right? What is your truth? Then anything you can achieve success, and success looks different for everybody. But you can live your dreams and build your legacy at any point in time with that dream. And I totally understand the take one step at a time and the just jumping right in. And that's kind of how I am too. It's like I just went right in because I had enough confidence in certain abilities. But even when I switched my career, I was doing door-to-door sales, and I switched into helping people with teaching people how money works. And it was a bit like, even though I was really good at the sales and at certain skills, when I moved into the financial world, the confidence that my skills could transfer was not there. And so I really underperformed my first year until I got a mentor and a coach to say, hey, look, it's actually the same thing. You can believe in yourself. You're worthy of success here. And I was like, oh, thanks, and then I doubled my income, so it's interesting what that permission can do for somebody. I'm curious, if somebody wanted to get access to your coaching or be coached by you or just have a conversation for that matter, where would they go? How would they get in contact with you?
Yeah. So Sam, I like to keep things cookies on the bottom shelf. Keep it simple, right? So I actually created a website landing page for you, specifically for your listeners. It's CoryLeeLeadership.com /FYL. And on there, it's got, you can connect with me on social media. I've got some stuff on there for about coaching and legacy builder mastermind groups that we have for male entrepreneurs. But I also have 2 free downloads for you guys, for your listeners. One of them is kind of like a personal assessment, just kind of see how balanced your life is. But the other one is a spousal survey. And the intent there is to create good communication with you and your spouse. So have fun with that. But anyway, it's CoryLeeLeadership.com /FYL. So that's
awesome. Well, I'm going to go take those tests, and we'll see my spousal communication, see what that's like. Hey, I always like to know and get the feedback. I figure any feedback is great feedback, even if sometimes it's just information that you find out, okay, well, I never want to talk to that person again. Then that's great feedback, right? You're isolating who you want to work with and who you don't want to work with, and it's not bad. I mean, it just is, right? It's neither good or bad. It just is. We got to move forward. So that's funny. Well, here that link will be in the show notes here, so you'll have access to that link. And then I'm excited to move on to this next section. It's called Legacy on Rapid Fire. 1 word, 1 sentence answers. We're going to find out where you're headed and how we can get there. So are you ready to begin Legacy on Rapid Fire?
Let's do it.
Fantastic. What do you believe is holding you back from reaching the next level of your legacy today?
Yeah, I think for me, it's associations, finding that next group. You don't want to be the smartest person in the room. Not saying I am, but I'm always trying to stretch. For me, it's associations with that next level. Yeah.
And what's the hardest thing you have ever accomplished?
Probably the hardest thing I've ever accomplished. I love health and fitness too, right? So I've done some half Ironman triathlons, but I would probably say that 31-mile race on the beach in the sand would probably be it. I say that because there's a mental challenge as well as a physical challenge. So it is awesome.
And what's the greatest success at this point in your life?
Outside of family and relationship with, God, I would say building our business and then selling that business, because it has that has impacted us for years to come, because now I've got the freedom and flexibility, but that I would say that, yeah, building that business and selling it.
Okay, what's another of your secrets that you believe contributes most to your success?
Daily habits, man, daily routines. Every morning, getting up 4:30, 4:45, getting in the Word, praying, setting my day, and being disciplined with that. That has been a game changer for me. Yeah.
That's awesome. And what is 1 or 2 books that you'd recommend to the Fuel Your Legacy audience?
Ooh, we only got 1 or 2. Think and Grow Rich is one. And then another one, the one that lit the fire for me it's called The Traveler's Gift by Andy Andrews. Love that book. There's a chapter in there that has literally changed my mindset. So anyway, that's one I would recommend.
Cool. Okay, so this is the final question. My favorite part of the whole conversation, even though we've had some really good parts, this is what I think caps off the whole thing, which is why I did the whole podcast to begin with. I want an answer to this question. So we're going to pretend that you've died, you've passed on, you're 6 generations from now. So this is your great, 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 great grandchildren. They're sitting around the kitchen table discussing your life and what your legacy was. What did it mean? What impact did you have on society? What do you want them to be saying about your legacy 6 generations from now?
Man, I love that question. That's a good question, because I'll be honest with you, Sam. One of my prayers is that our family be blessed through thousands of generations, right? And that takes intentionality. And I know this is supposed to be super short, right? I know.
Oh, you're good. You're good. This one you can take a little bit longer to answer.
But this morning, reading Proverbs, right? Proverbs 13:22. It says, "A good man, right, leaves an inheritance for his children's children," right? And I love that because that's what I want to do. Is I want to leave an inheritance, and not just financial, but a set of values and belief systems and work ethics and disciplines, and where I'm not just a river, or not just a reservoir. I'm a river. And impart that in such a way that my kids are rivers as well, that their kids are rivers as well, that they're not just receiving it, but they know how to impart it as well. And I think to my friend's quote, he says, his name's Sky King, but he says, "I want to forever change my branch of the King family tree." And I think that's great. I want to forever change my branch of the Lee family tree. So I hope they would be talking about that he was an influencer, a true influencer that made an impact and added value to other people, and where they not only received it, but they went out and impacted other people as well. So
I love that. I love the imagery.
Hope I didn't ramble too much.
No, that's perfect.
That's my jam right there. I love that question.
That's good. Yeah, I love the imagery of a river. I've never really thought of it that way, but yeah, you want it to be able to continue to flow past you. And just keep building on you. Like it's funny, my one of my business partners, he does web development, and he always uses the example of the Mississippi River, and how, like, where does the Mississippi River start? It starts in some pond up in the north, and because of all the different tributaries to that river, it becomes something that you have to be swimming, so many miles an hour north just to even stay in one spot, farther down the river. And so for us, how do we create that same type of river of a legacy that ultimately we might be the pond where it started, but we've got enough people, family members, and other individuals who see the vision of that river, who are going to contribute to that river long term. It's not so that we can see or we can be recognized for the grandiose river that comes out down in New Orleans, but because we're still the little pond. We're not anything significant. We're just a little pond. But because enough people contributed to that vision, now we've got a movement and impact on the world that's significant. I think it's such a beautiful imagery. I know I never connected that wholly. But thank you for that. Thank you for connecting that in my mind.
Yeah, that's
cool.
Great.
Well, yeah, thank you so much for your time. Definitely go check that out. I'm going to go do those quizzes. Is it? It's just a PDF.
It is. It's it should be a PDF download type thing. So
awesome. Yeah. Well, I'm excited to do that with myself and my wife. Find out where we can improve and get better as a couple. I'm always looking for ways to improve our relationship. But super grateful for you, Cory, and we'll let you get back to your morning. I'll catch you next time on the Fuel Your Legacy show.
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks for joining us. If what you heard today resonates with you, please like, comment, and share on social media. Tag me. And if you do give me a shout out, I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Thanks to all of those who've left a review. It helps spread the message of what it takes to build a legacy that lasts. And we'll catch you next time on Fuel Your Legacy.